What do you think? It's very important to have a strong alignment in leadership principles.
Maybe my answer is a bit controversial. What path is better to take at certain situations
Is the main reason that made people stay here.
are getting into a point in which we are able to know, feel comfortable with
Being comfortable, yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Angela from LeadTech, and today I bring you a new edition of In It. In this interview, I spoke with Italo and Andreina, our HR VPs. It was very interesting because we spoke about the tech sector and the constant changes and how to keep the balance between technology and people. So if you like the content, follow us and subscribe to the channel. So hello Andreina and hello Italo. Welcome to this new edition of In It. I was very excited about having you here today, and especially Andreina, I really wanted to ask you something about the changes through time at the company, because I know you have been here since the company had around 100 employees, and nowadays we are more than 1,000. So what do you think through all these changes have really changed, and what is still remain at the core of the company?
Hi, Angela. Thank you so much. Yes, I had the chance and luck to be part of this company for quite a while. And of course, these very different moments have been pretty different. But I must say, since the beginning, I was able to see the transformation that happened during that time when joining the company. We were around 70, 100 people, and we started by knowing everyone that was around us, and we were able to scale the company pretty fast. Started creating a very strong talent structure. And by then, and after a couple of years, I was able to also lead the talent acquisition team. And by that point, the company was also prepared to get the structure even stronger. We started to create pretty different teams, and also creating the collaboration between each other. And by now, I must say that as HRBP, I'm able to see the full picture. Um, Not only being able to see the teams and the future that we tried to create at the beginning, but also how everything came together, and we were able to always stay focused on the same goals, creating a great team, a great collaboration atmosphere, and also always having the team focus on innovation. So I must say that even though we have grown so much, the essence is still the same.
That's great. I love the fact that you are a live example of the career path in LeadTech, that you start with talent acquisition and you end as a lead team of talent acquisition, now HR VP. I love that. I love that.
Yes, it's
And
been quite a ride.
yeah,
So long.
good and better. And Italio, I know you have plenty experience in the tech sector. You have been working all around the world. You have like a multicultural background. Um, I know it's something like common to all the companies that nowadays the changes are constant since technologies arise and everything. So how do you handle to keep the culture of a company getting stronger and stronger and avoid dilution of the culture?
Oh wow, great question. So yeah, Angela, thanks very much for having us here.
Sure.
That is a very important question. I think when we're looking at scaling companies, it's in one way very difficult to avoid that, to completely uh, avoid diluting the culture a little bit, because I think that's the very principle, right? The culture will adapt and will kind of expand and grow with the company as the company scales and you get a lot more people through the door. But that said, when you have certain values that are really well established and really thought of, you end up having something to rely on as pillars as you create new processes, as people come through the door and you create new teams, new dynamics, and so on, that would add to the culture that already exists. But it's definitely important to remember not to go to the radical type of changes immediately, right? Scaling requires new processes to be put in place. It requires new dynamics, new ways of working, but shipping those changes in smaller sprints is more important than trying to achieve something radically different overnight.
So you had to settle like a pace, let's say.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's more of a pace of constant smaller changes as opposed to designing something that takes too long to design and implement the perfect per se. You just kind of design and very quickly implement something small, measure it's working, keep going, measure and keep going. Diagnosing and implementing by sort of smaller steps is more important. And I think that then at the end of the day helps not to dilute the culture of the company as well, right? So you kind of maintain things in the same rhythm.
Yeah, I really like that because you mentioned the values like a light or a guide, but also this space or these content changes, but the smallest one, make me think of employees when they are facing all these kind of changes that maybe they have less fear because they feel more like, yeah, like guided through the steps, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, nowadays companies are it's very typical to say we are a fast-paced environment,
Yeah.
which we are, but then everybody kind of has to say the same because the I think the just the rhythm of product development nowadays is really, really fast. But then when that's the case, you might have some uncertainties on one side. You have to pivot quickly or you have to change directions, but you have some certainty on the other side
Yeah,
where
exactly.
you know how internal processes will stay or how slowly they will change, and you kind of can adapt at a much better pace.
Yeah, as you say, I know that HRBPs had a lot to be with the strategy that HR develops, but how you bridge the distance between the strategy and the real execution?
It's quite a difficult. And I don't think there's only one way to do that, but I think what usually helps, or what's the actual cooking result is to be completely aligned with the business needs and priorities.
Okay.
That's something that is crucial, and it's required since the beginning. If you don't know where the business is going, it's impossible from an HR perspective to plan any initiative, any strategy. Um, if we don't have that information. So if I have to start from the beginning, I would just suggest to go deeper into understanding what the business is planning, where does the business wants to go, and how can we become allies with the business and help them get to that point. In my requires three different strategies that later there will become actions, initiative. It can be directly attacking like talent development, strengthening leadership capabilities, also focusing on keeping the culture um, where we want to be. But for sure, the main point here is to be completely aligned with what the business actually needs. I mean, we cannot forget that we are allies for them, and we are an additional help for them to support the expected results that they want.
Perfect. So, yeah, the business goals and values sounds like strategic tools to keep up with the technology and environment changes.
Definitely.
But when you think about the leadership, because all of these kind of answers sounds to me that are like leadership decision. But when you think about someone that it gets into the company or it's growing at the company, like leading a team through all these phases, what do you think it's necessary to have as as a mindset, you know?
Wanna-
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think companies do make quite an effort to establish some form of leadership principles,
Mhm.
at least some set of principles that help guide the type of leadership that the company is expecting from you as a new leader, but also how that can inform smaller things like processes. It can inform how the partnership between HRBPs and leaders will work. And when a new leader is joining the organization as an HRBP and probably somebody who's going to work with this leader, I'm expecting them to come with maybe an open mind towards talent management,
Mhm.
but preferably some kind of skills established in that domain. Some kind of understanding of I know how to coach my team. I know how to give effective feedback.
Yeah,
I
how
don't
to
know.
cope in a crisis, for
Oh,
example.
absolutely. For example, yeah. How do I get them from 2020 to 2021
Yeah.
in the middle of a pandemic and
Mhm.
so on?
Mhm.
So there's crisis management as well, and they might not have all of those skills absolutely established, but if they have some of them, there's something we can start working on.
Okay. Okay. So this is a question that is very personal. The answer I want it to be very personal too. But what do you think is the strongest? Like having a strong leader or create like several leadership attitudes in the whole team?
Hmm. I would say it's a little bit of both. Companies have nuances that differentiates them from one another,
Mm.
and that goes in terms of culture, that goes in terms of certain dynamics, especially because you have some cultural elements that come into it as well. And most of product development is done very similarly. So what differentiates company will be this little differences, these nuances. It's very important to have a strong alignment in leadership principles. You want all of your leaders to be more or less on the same page.
Mm.
But maybe somebody at higher management needs to have a very strong um, way of conveying the vision of the company, conveying the mission of the company,
Mm.
and making sure that they really have a grip on that so they can then translate that to their immediate leadership team and they can kind of cascade that down. If you don't have that, what happens is you have a bit of um, an anarchy per se,
Mhm.
but that doesn't necessarily benefit the final layer of of the employees. So you have people having completely different experiences depending on the kind of leader that they have, as opposed to having more or less the same type of experience because they have leaders that are aligned under the same principles.
Perfect. Now, you mentioned before that sometimes people arrive to the company with certain skills and you train them or you start working from there to something else. So, how do you coach managers?
I think you cannot only focus on performance. Of course, that's something that you should always keep in mind, but you should always keep in mind also potential.
Mhm.
And that potential can lead to pretty different path. And there's where maybe leadership might appear, but there might be also other type of um, career path that can be
Mhm.
explored. So I think that coaching leaders, or people leaders, at that point is crucial because not everyone has to follow the same path. Not everybody have to um, apply to a certain positions to feel like they evolving.
Mhm.
And nowadays there are several opportunities pretty different between each other, and that might help that a person explore new capabilities that they might have. So I think coaching leaders at that point on detecting that specific areas is crucial for helping the team and growth, and also to increase retention. It's important for people to feel like they belong somewhere and that they create an impact where they're actually working at.
So, Andre, from your answer, I figure out that as an HRBP, you have to be kind of creative to find this different career path or to help people like see away from they are now, like where they can reach. So, what else do you think should be like important to have as a skill if you want to be an HRBP, or is an HRBP seeing this video? What should you recommend?
It's a tough question. It's a cool question. But I think we always have to keep in mind that a HRBP is someone who, with a pretty uh, human focused type of perspective, and also needs to have also this business mindset at the same time. So they don't always are aligned. You need to try to find the way to make both of those paths get in touch at some point. It's not always possible, but I think we as HRBP need to have take the responsibility to coach others on how to determine where are the possibilities to take that person to another level, what opportunities might there appear, and that might be aligned to their hopes or not. But also at the same times, keeping them aware that everything comes from business needs. And maybe an opportunity appears, but not at the time that the person is hoping for. So that's something that also the leaders, yeah, you need to hire the way, right? Frustration is part of the process sometimes, and as Italo mentioned before, uh, prices might arise from several type of problem, and also part of the process to get into that point. But it does not always have a nice ending. But I would say most of the time we're able to find uh, a spot in which the person and also the company has both get an impact and a recognition.
I had to say that my admiration for you keeps growing through this interview. So you spoke about this balance, let's say, and how do you keep the balance between the data-driven decision and this kind of intuition that you have and you bring from this background of human resources?
Yeah, we have this conversation all the time. Right?
Yeah, it's a tension, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
subtle.
is. It is. I think the concept of data driven is in itself something that drives this conversation to a certain direction. Here is where I think we should really be data informed, right? So you want to have all the evidence
Mhm.
to make sure there is, I think a let's say justified
Mhm.
path to your thought process,
Mhm.
but at the same time, you need context.
Yeah.
So data, everything exists in context, and data exists in context. So you need to be data informed more than data driven.
Mhm.
And that's when we, I think, have these conversations to try and really gather the right amount of context, or if you will, as much context as possible. Because data nowadays, most of our systems are already producing a fairly big volume. We have huge amounts of data to analyze, but for example, with so many different tools and so much data to analyze, it's very easy to just grab everything, throw into ChatGPT,
Exactly.
and say,
My
analyze this.
report.
Exactly. Just build me a report and all of that
Yeah.
with the right prompt to get all of those results. But then you find yourself looking at those results and they're not really telling a compelling or sometimes even the real story,
Yeah, the whole story.
because
Exactly.
you need that context. And that's where you kind of have to strike that balance. You gather as much data as possible, you look for what's relevant, you look at the evidence, but all of that exists within the frame of your context.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for that answer. I really enjoy it. Not data driving, that time farm. Okay. Okay, but this that you mentioned, like data, we have a datification. Yeah, everything increase around datification, and we increase the use of technology in all the processes, and we are very into that at this company. It's something very attractive of this company. But have you had an experience where you find this like limit of the technology getting involved in a process? Like, I mean, when you did the balance and you say, okay, in this, maybe it's better to use another path. If you can share some experience around that.
What do you think? That's a difficult one. That's a difficult one.
Yeah.
I am very, very much into technology. So
I know.
you see how she's laughing. She's looking at me and she's laughing. So yeah, that's a difficult one.
I think we always try to find a way to involve the right technology at the right moment. But I think Italo mentioned it the best way possible. Um, you can always count on technology, but I think we're at a point in which we need to be there to bring context just for it to be actually or make the get us to the right results that we're expecting. So I don't think their technology is there to a point to be a blocker for us, but um, for sure you need to know the limits, to know on what situation you need to use certain technology and which is not the best option.
I like the proper use
Yes,
of it.
Yeah.
yes. But for example, if we take AI right now, we even though we're not expert, Italy is quite advanced actually, but we are getting into a point in which we are able to know what path is better to take at certain situations, what tool might be helping us the best to get certain information, to get the style, the format that we're looking for. And I think we are becoming an ally also to technology or AI and at this point.
That's true. That's true. Well, that's at the end of the day, that's the value we bring to the table.
Exactly.
So otherwise, it's the conversation that's been happening nowadays in terms of AI is going to take my job. Um, as much as I absolutely love technology, I'm obsessed with it. I am confident that that last 10% is still human in the loop for a reason, and that reason is we still bring that value to the table. And even though we get 90% done, which is still not the case, that value is still very much in play. So we have lots of conversations here about that as well.
You know what? That the 10% that you're mentioning, that value that you're mentioning, I think it's like the critical mindset. That's conclusion, you know, because I'm a very techy person also and too, but I think this balance that we can keep between the data driven and the context and everything is all like resume or summarize in our like critical thinking.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking on something that we have been working on over the past weeks, and we always have the thought of maybe estimating how much time is this proposal going to save for example, people leaders. And at the same time, we always include that what part are they not able to do with this tool that we are creating. But even though they are still required, we us are still required. There are a lot of operational tasks that are now automated that can be easily fixed, easily done. And that also gave us time to focus on a more strategic mindset,
Yeah,
more
what's really
strategic
important when we
initiatives.
write.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that there is I just complete change of the twist of the blows. But I know there's a lot of people here in Litzek, and this is something that I felt amazed when I arrived here. That has stayed here for longer than 10 years, as you, Andreina. So I call them the MVPs because they see the whole process. But as HRVPs, that you are in contact with people constantly, what do you hear is the main reason that made people stay here?
Um, I would say, and I like to see at the same time, that it is the constant opportunity for adapt to new situation.
Okay.
I think not everyone is done or feel comfortable with this type of environment. Um, but at the same time, giving them these constant challenges is what make them maybe have this adrenaline to stay on the loop with us. But as I said before, not everyone is it's made for this. I would say in our industry and specifically for the projects that we have inside, we need to be in constant adaptation
Yeah.
to the
Well,
processes, to the situations, environments, everything. Markets shift, also technology evolve, and people even change their mind overnight. So we need to keep track of those expectations. And by that, I think the best thing that we can give them is challenges, constant challenges to know that they're evolving, that they're growing, and that they can create impact in the company. I think that's the easiest and best way for you to feel like you are contributing to something.
Absolutely.
This is interesting because I was thinking, how do you detect or realize that someone needs a new challenge at the moment, or if they need to stay more stable, you know?
Maybe my answer is a bit controversial. But I think stability may be an illusion
Yeah.
at this point.
Sure.
Because given the context of our specific company and maybe even industry, we don't have room for staying quiet and still. We need to always be aware of our surroundings and what's happening. Like, how can we be on top of what's going on? So I think having challenges is not optional. Of course, challenges might be bigger or smaller, but once you get comfortable with that situation, from my perspective at least, that means you need to get on top of the next challenge.
That's right.
Yeah. Out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. That's the leadership as well, right?
Yeah, feel comfortable with being
Be uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly.
But you know, I think that that context is what results into very passionate people in the company. Because you go around the office, and all people is quite passionate about what they do at the company. So yeah, um, uh, to be closing the interview and to getting to an end. What's one conversation that you had, like a personal at the personal level, that changed your vision on being an HRBP?
Wow. Mm, that changed my vision of being an HRBP. I suppose I saw the HRBP position when I first started, or when I transitioned from being in talent acquisition to talent management to becoming an HRBP. I saw it as trying to help the HR department sort of enforce HR policies. And then trying to understand how I could bring value in speaking to the leaders I worked with. One of them, actually a design leader, told me, you should think of your position not as somebody enforcing policies and so on, but somebody that is a designer. somebody that is designing an experience. And that experience will bring value to the company and will allow the company to reach its
I
objectives.
love that.
And I think since then, it's that balance that Levian just mentioned, and I think it's what changed my perspective on the role, and I think maybe on the role has stayed the same for all of these years.
Thank you, Italo, for your answer. And
Absolutely.
now that you mentioned this of being like a designer of an experience, if you have to design an HR department from scratch, what would you keep and what would you change?
Oh, that would be quite a challenge. I think designing an HR department from scratch, if I had the chance to do it now, I would try, especially in a tech company and in tech
Yeah.
environments, I would try to frame the HR department as HR as a service, or rather, almost HR as a product, and think of everything HR can do for the company, whether I'm talking compliance, talent acquisition, talent management, and so on. I would look at what needs to be done and what's actually shipped, what's putting into practice, as let's diagnose, let's divide into um, small sprints, if you will, and then ship constantly. Let's just get everyone to understand we're not going to design something from scratch, a whole process from scratch. We're going to deliver an MVP, and we're going to iterate over on that MVP of any of the processes that you can think of within an HR department.
Yes, I just wanted to add something else. I think not all companies, but some of them um, still see HR as a process-led type of department.
Sure.
So I think I would start from that point, just as Italo mentioned, finding what's the impact, where are the areas in which you will see the impact that HR can bring, and not only focus on the process that might be involved in that, but also the outcome from everything that can be managed from that. And also, to get to that point, it's important for HR to be involved in certain decisions from the company. Um, if we receive those information as a last point resource, and then it's like we are not able to keep state or manage certain actions, initiatives on time, we might just be responsive and not proactive. And we do not align from the starting point.
Yeah, you have less like field of action, let's
Yeah.
say.
Mhm.
Yeah, and looking ahead, now that you started the interview telling us how was LeadTech at what point, but looking ahead, like probably in 2 years from now, what will you think will be considered like excellence in LeadTech?
Um, Perfection is not the
No, that's
so is not the answer, but I must say that seeing the path and the resources that we have nowadays in our hands, I would say we'll still be normalizing AI as part of our day. We will just get more comfortable with having and using the tools and seeing it as an add-on to our capabilities. That's something that not everyone is already looking at the tool this way. So that's something that we need to understand. And I would just say we will be more audacious, agile, and yeah, I think AI can bring us to that point, uh, freeing us some time that we currently are using to do some more operational or repetitive tasks. And so we can focus on other things that might create a bigger impact, a bigger outcome. But I think we will still be maintaining the same essence that we mentioned at the beginning, keeping the DNA that ESEC has. And of course, curiosity and adaptability will always be on the table. We are in a very fast moving environment. So that's something that we will need to still be always considering.
I love the fact that you are very like honest about this constant change that we need to make. But also, I will like rethink about what Italo mentioned at the beginning of this interview when he said that we have the values, we have to settle the pace. So I feel like you as HRBP will like help people have this frame to do these changes. So that's a very good combination, you know, to
Yes.
keep the balance. So thank you, Andreina. Thank you, Italo, for this interview. We'll see you all in the next edition of Meet.
Thank you, Juanita. Pleasure.